In today's Leeds news, Leeds win the race for Scottish ace. Leeds want James Milner. Leeds United chase Norwich director of football. And the Manchester City versus Leeds United preview. Hey folks, Jerry here at The View on the 5th of May, Friday, final video of the week. And to everyone who's new to the channel, because the subscriber count went crazy over the last couple of days, firstly, thanks for that. I really appreciate it. Over 9,000 subs, which is mad. Secondly, how we're going to do this is the first half of this video will be the news from today. The second half of the video will be the match preview that we will we'll break it up with a slide or something. So you'll see the difference between the two. So if you don't want to watch the preview, you can stick around for the news. If you want to watch the news, you want to do the preview, not the news, you can fast forward to the end. So there you go. All right, let's crack on with this. And we'll start off with the news that Leeds United have apparently won the race to sign Scottish starlet Josh Mcdonald. Leeds are set to have fall off interest from several Premier League clubs as well as Rangers in Scotland. Mcdonald is 16, has represented Scotland at all age groups up to that so far, and has been described in Scotland as an exceptional talent. According to Football Insider, Leeds have beaten off several top clubs in order to get the signature of the player, and he will join Leeds from Hamilton Academical for a fee of £150,000. The player is described as being an exceptional talent as well. There have been a lot of people on the channel, on the comment section, asking why Leeds are spending so much time recruiting young players when they need current crop players, which is a fair point. And what I would say to that is Leeds need to do both. They've got an underage youth academy scouting system that are looking for players for the underage teams, as well as a senior scouting team looking for players in the senior team. You can't do one or the other. You've got to do both. So that's that reason why. Moving on, let's talk about the other end of the scale. And let's talk about a story a lot of people will be very happy to see. But I would caveat this by saying I don't believe there's any truth at all in this. And we'll start off with the first line, which explain that. According to 90 Minutes, and there you go. Leeds have joined Brighton, Everton, and Nottingham Forest in the race to sign James Milner. Milner is out of contract at Liverpool at the end of the season, and Liverpool have announced that they will not be offering the player another contract. Leeds are desperately in need of experience. However, a drop into the Championship would make any kind of move for Milner difficult, as the other three clubs two of them may still be in the Premier League at that time. Milner obviously started his career at Leeds before moving off to huge success at other clubs. It will be a nice bookend to his career to finish his time at Leeds. The romanticism of the whole thing is where I think this story has come from. I don't believe there's any credibility to this at all. I think at the age of 39, James Milner is probably outside of what Leeds are actually looking for. I wouldn't be against seeing him come back in for a year. It'd be nice to see him with the younger players and add some experience there and see what he can do. He's still in incredible shape. He's still well able to play at Premier League level. He's looked after himself. So it would be nice to see him. What I should say, though, as well, is that according to 90 Minutes, Brighton are by far the favourites for the signature of the former Leeds United graduate. So there you go. That's that one. Moving on, let's talk about the Leeds United under-21s. Details of their playoff semi-final against Aston Villa have come out. Leeds will play Aston Villa on the 8th of May in Ellen Road, and tickets are on sale for that game over on leedsunited.com. You can check that out through them. Huge game for them. It's a one-legged playoff. Leeds have got home advantage because of where they finished in the league. So a win there will put them into the final of the playoffs and then one game away from hopefully getting promotion back into the top tier of the Premier League too. Right, that's that one. Moving on, let's talk about Director of Football. On the back of Victor Orta losing his job at Leeds and Leeds moving on from him, Leeds are said to be deep in the process for recruiting another director of football, and sources have indicated to Leeds all over. So again, a little bit of pinch of salt with this. That Norwich City director of football Stuart Webber is Leeds United's prime candidate. Webber has overseen 2 promotion campaigns at Nottingham Forest and is highly ranked around the league in his role as a director of football. Radrazani is said to be a keen admirer of Webber and the job that he has done at Norwich up until this point. It should also be pointed out that Chelsea owner Todd Bowley was very interested in signing Webber when he was looking for a sporting director earlier on this year. They didn't decide to go in that direction in the end, but Leeds are very, very interested in appointing Stuart Webber should everything go well. The other caveat to this to say as well is a lot of these appointments will depend on Leeds' status in the Premier League or Championship, because it will depend on what the situation is with the takeover from 49ers. So until we know that, we don't really know who's recruiting for this role, whether it's a 49ers decision or whether it be a Radrazani decision. 49ers will obviously be involved in the decision making if Radrazani decides to stay as a 44% co-owners. But if Radrizzani decides to sell and move on, then the job of recruiting for that role would fall 100% to the 49ers to get that one done. So there you go. Interesting times. That's pretty much it for the news for today. We are going to move on now to the match day preview. So if you don't want to see any more of this, thanks for watching, and I'll see you on Monday morning with a review of the weekend. And if you do, I will see you in 2 seconds over on the next bit. See you in a sec. Bye. Okay, here we go. The second press conference from Sam Allardyce in a week has finished up. A couple of things to pick out from this injury-wise. He said no Stuart Dallas, no Liam Cooper, no Lewis Sinistera, and no Tyler Adams. They are confirmed as being out of the weekend's game. However, it was interesting to see in some of the photographs from the training session yesterday that Charlie Allen from the 21s is involved, as is Darko JB, Mateo Joseph, Sonny Perkins were all pictured with the first team players as well, which is going to be an interesting one. Charlie Allen, interesting one. Good midfielder. Had a really good year with the 21, so it'll be interesting to see does he make the bench as well. Let's start off with this. And basically, Sam has been asked about his response from the players to what's gone on this week. And he said, look, players have aired their views. He's spoken to them all individually, and they've aired their views on what's gone on, what's gone wrong, what they think will fix this. And he said that helps him put together a plan in his head of what's exactly gone on and what areas he needs to tackle. He said that he's listened to the staff that have been here previously on what these players can and can't do, what their preferred positions are, what they're best at, what they don't do particularly well. And all of that will help him form an opinion. He said that he will give the players the starting 11 for tomorrow today, and he has a couple of big decisions to make. But he said they'll then focus on doing some on the pitch bits today, and then they'll try and get on the buses or planes or wherever it is to head across to Manchester to the hotel to get set. Asked about the Pep Klopp and Arteta comments earlier in the week, he said, "Look, Pep's brilliant. Look at what he's achieved." He said it's arguable whether he's the best team in the Premier League history, given what Sir Alex Ferguson did at Manchester United and the Invincibles teams at Arsenal. But he said his management style is excellent. They're in the form of their season coming into this game, which is going to be hard. He goes, we need to be ruthless when we get any chances. He said we won't get many chances in this game, so every chance we get, we need to be ruthless and take those chances. And he said, but it's going to be tough. He said they've been the best team this season. You can see why. Moving on, then asked about how he has rebuilt them mentally, and what he basically said is, I try and smile at every player, try and get into a conversation with every single player. He said Robbie Keane is great at lifting the spirit and getting amongst the lads. He's been involved. He's got involved in some training this week. He's been talking to lads. He's got in amongst the players. That kind of connective tissue between the management team and the players, which is good to have that there as well. So he said that's been great to have. And he said, look, just trying to lift the dressing room is all we can do right now. Make sure that they're all happy, make sure they understand, trying to lift doom and gloom by talking about what they've done well in games as well, and making sure they can take that into the next game. And then hopefully that'll help us get some results. Asked about how Leeds will look tomorrow. Adam Pope asked, is it square pegs and square holes? And he said, or round pegs and round holes. And he said, look, it's as best as we can fit in with the players that are available to us. We are missing a few, but he said, look, Leeds have been very good in possession this season. The issues for Leeds have been when they've been out of possession and the goals they've conceded, the amount of goals they've conceded, and the types of goals that they've conceded. So he said, look, the concentration and the number one priority right now has been stopping the goals going in. The work that we need to do is about making sure we've got balance and make sure we can actually shore up the defense and stop the goals we've conceded, and make sure that when we do lose the ball, every single player defends. So that's the attackers cutting out passes into midfield, and the midfield helping the defense and shielding the defense. He talked a lot about shielding the back five, which back four and the goalkeeper. Asked about that back five and what we can expect from that, and any midfield changes. What he said was, you can expect a system that will help them out, that will give them a bit more cover. So didn't give an awful lot away there. Asked about what is key against City based on the game that they've just recently played against West Ham. And he said, if you look at West Ham, they did really, really well. They had held City pretty well until they gave away a silly free kick. And you just can't do that against teams like Manchester City. And he said, look, we have to avoid that, not giving possession away too often. When we have the ball, we've got to understand how important it is to protect that ball and keep that ball. And he said, get up the pitch and create some chances if we have a chance. He said, if you switch off against City, they will punish you. And he said, we can't do that. We've got to make sure we take all of our opportunities when we get them again. So moving on, asked about the Pat Bamford effect and his comments during the week. Have they puffed out Pat Bamford's chest? And he said, look, we're trying to make everybody at the club feel better. He said there's been a lot of conversations, a lot of general chats with players one-on-one. He said the more I get to know these players, the more I know makes them tick, the more I can help them to get the best out of their form going into games. Then asked about the personal level on the touchline. Is he happy to be back? And he said, look, I'll be pretty nervous on the morning of the game. He said, but we'll get set. Hope that nothing pops up from the physio. No phone calls between now and tomorrow morning from the physio saying that people have got a fever or any injuries are seized up. And he says that's the one thing to avoid. And he said then we'll just finish off with a few bits and pieces in the hotel before we make our way down to the ground and get set for the game. And he said then once kickoff happens, I'll be 100% focused on the games and the nerves will go away. So we'll have to wait and see how we get on then. Then moving on, talking about City can score from anywhere and how's he going to deal with Erling Haaland. And he said, look, you just need to stop the ball getting to him. You got to cut out the passing lanes. You've got to stop them creating chances for him. It's the only way to stop him, and then be competitive and be physical with him when you can be. Asked about will Liam Cooper play again this season? He said, I don't know. He said, we've only been focused on the players that are fit for this game. He asked about Cooper and was told he was out of this game. So he hasn't focused on Cooper for this game. He said, look, we hope to have as many players back as we can, but we just don't know right now. Heading on into the next question, then he was asked about how can he surprise Manchester City. And he said Pep might think that he knows him, but it's been a while since he's managed against him. He said he's got a couple of new tricks up his sleeve as well. But he said it's a different team with different players and different strengths. And he said that there's always an element of surprise in the first 10 to 15 minutes of a game. And then after that, things will settle down. So he said, look, let's hope it works. So there's that. Asked about Ilya Meslier, and he mentioned the form that Meslier has been in earlier on this week. And he basically said, look, I don't see any problems with the player in training. You look at the goalkeepers in the group, they're all mad. They get on very well together. They do a lot of repetitive training, where if an outfield player did that, they probably get bored, but they don't. They seem to love it. And he said he doesn't see any issues with him in training. He said he seems quite confident, but all the goalkeepers do, and they're very good as a group. He also said that this will be the biggest decision that he makes this week, which probably pops into your head that there is a decision to be made, or he is considering making a decision. So that'll be interesting. Asked about Sean McKennie and Rocket and the midfield in front, on the back of saying they need to protect the back four. And he said, look, we need to make the midfield as strong as we can. Simple as. Straightforward. Moved on then, asked about results or performance against City, which is the most important. And he said performance defensively, because we've been so poor at the recent. He has directly called out how poor we've been. He's not trying to sugarcoat this at all. He said Manchester City are top of the league, top side in the Premier Division, because they're very good defensively, because they defend as a unit across the whole park. Every player defends. So he says players have got to buy into what we're trying to do here as well and buy into that. And if they do, then we'll get the best form from them. Asked about whether he's brought in a psychologist. He said there's already one here, which he said during the week, which was a silly question to ask. And then asked, is there a problem mentally with the players, on the back of the comments from Javi Gracia earlier last week, where he said the players kind of felt like boxers who just taken a few too many punches and couldn't steady their feet. And he said, look, the mind is everything. He said, we will talk to them about mindfulness as well, about their headspace. And he said, time to relax and get away from training is important. Spend time with their family. It's good for them. He said, this thing about training for 6 days a week and keeping players in for an extra day because that hasn't gone well, can burn out the players and you'll start seeing them looking tired, not because of fitness, because they're mentally fatigued. And he said, you need to give them space and time. And sometimes spending time with their family is the best way to do that. But he says, we know exactly what we're trying to do here, and a positive mindset is hugely important for these players. Asked about what's going on wrong defensively, he said protection. Every player from back to front needs to help out defensively, and he said when we haven't got the ball, we've got to make sure we're tough to beat and tough to get through. And he goes, and it's been harder so far. He said the attackers need to realize they have to get involved in this as well and try and cut out passes that are going forward. He said in the Premier League, you can't wait and sit and hope the ball's going to come to you. You've got to get involved and help out the team. So, there's that one. Moving on, leadership in the squad. He was asked about that as well, and he said that he'll find out basically over time. He said, look, there's been talks this week, and there are certain players who'll speak up and will give their mind. And he said there's quieter people who don't. And he said basically what you need to see is when it's going well, people will talk. When it's not going so well, it's harder. People are afraid to criticize a team performance or other individuals if they're not playing particularly well. So he said the focus is on getting them playing well individually, and then that stuff will come. Change of atmosphere and how he changed the atmosphere. He said nothing mad really. He said just talk to the lads. That's it, pretty much. He said spend some time with them. He said I have a different approach. I communicate with players an awful lot. I'm not distant with them. He said when the opportunity comes up to put a joke in, I'll throw a joke in. He said some of them look at me like I'm a bit mad and did I really mean that? Then I'll laugh and they're okay with it. So he said it's just about that. He goes, and just talking in general and try and find out what makes them comfortable, and listen to them, listen to the players. Then asked about days off. We've already covered that. He said, look, he doesn't believe in this extra day thing and working them till they're dead. He said, look, it's the right thing to do is to talk to players, give them time to wind down and relax as well and get some space away from the game. Asked then about what he thought he'd get from the game. And he just basically said that we have to perform. We have to perform. we've been so weak defensively, and that's going to be the primary thing. Is most of the focus this week has been on defending as a team. So that's the one big thing to see. He said that we'll have a game plan, and we'll try and see if we can stick to it. And that's been the issue this season for Leeds, is when there has been a game plan. We've seen Javi Garcia talk about game plans. We saw Jesse Marsh talk a lot about game plans, and what we have seen from a Leeds team this year is that as soon as they concede, the game plan seems to go out the window. So it will be important to see who can concentrate well enough to stick to the game plan, which players Sam leans on going into this game, who he thinks are the right players mentally for this task. It's look, Man City is the ultimate free hit, isn't it? It really, really is. I mean, we have to see what happens from it and see if Leeds can get anything from this. But what you want to see is a bit more graft, a bit more fight, and a bit more effort from these players. You want to see they're digging in for a fight, and it'll be very interesting to see what type of team he puts out on the pitch tomorrow. And one of the most interesting team sheets I think we'll have seen. He knows Leeds. He knows what the problem with Leeds has been this year. He's talked extensively about Leeds over the last couple of months on podcasts and on interviews that he's done. He knows where the gaps are with Leeds, and it'll be interesting to see how quickly he reacts to what his thoughts are, or what he's seeing in training, or which direction he decides to go with. So it's going to be interesting. As I said, it's the ultimate free hit. No one's expecting us to get anything from this. Most people are expecting us to get beaten heavily. We'll have to wait and see if they can nick a point here. What a result that would be. But let's not lose the run of ourselves. Big game. More important games ahead, more importantly. So that'll be it for today, folks. I will be back on Monday morning with your Leeds news. I know there's a coronation thing happening on Monday, but we'll do it anyway, or whatever day the coronation's happening. I don't know. Anyway, go on. I'll let you go, and I'll see you on Monday for the reaction. I should be on Just Joe Show on Sunday night as well for the final war as well, depending. See you then. Have a great weekend. Mind yourself. Bye.